Welcome back, all my 40k fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to bring you my list that will be taking on Lane later this week. So I'm working with Lane, helping him prep for a GT that he's going to be traveling to. I plan on doing an RTT here soon, and I haven't decided what I'm going to play yet. But considering the fact I've run all of my armies except for one, I think it's time I bring them. And it's time for the Dread Mob. So the Ork Dread Mob is one of my favorite detachments. I really love this one because of all the Ork walkers and all the boosts that you get to your Ork walkers that you get to use. I'm not a big Ork fan, but I like Ork walkers. I like their dreadnoughts. I like the Killa cans. I love the Killa cans, as you will soon see. So this is a list that I liked when the Codex came out. I really liked it a lot. It looked like it had a lot of good play. It looked like it was very, very strong. Then some nerfs that inadvertently ended up kind of hurting the Dread Mob came into play, and it hurt the list that I was building. So it made it kind of rough, more for the secondary game and just being able to play the list in general. At least I was struggling with it with the style I was trying to go. Now, with the Orks receiving some buffs and some just tweaks to the all-around codex, the Dread Mob that I was running comes back into power, and I'm able to run it the way I wanted to before. Now, I do have some more points because a lot of stuff went down, so we made some tweaks and got some interesting little changes in here, especially with the tank bustas that I initially was very upset about because I got one of the old pewter kits, and I was like, oh, this is cool, I got all these guys, and then they changed them. And although they changed them and it kind of messes with that kit, man, they're mean. They are very, very mean. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those guys can do on the table as well. This is going to be a good test. I'm not sure what Lane is running. He's been messing with a couple of things. He said between Death Watch, Blood Angels, it's going to be some Marines. But he's not 100% sure, so we'll find out here soon. But either way, vehicles are popular in the meta right now. They're a very strong place to play and a very strong unit type to use. So not only do I include a bunch of vehicles, but I actually have a crazy amount of firepower. Granted, it is Ork firepower, but it is a lot. So without further ado, let's jump over into the Ork Dread Mob and talk about what I'll be bringing here today. All right, here it is, 1995 Ork Dread Mob. So with the Dread Mob, we have our detachment rule, which is the push the button. Basically, we can roll a dice whenever we shoot with a unit or fight with a unit, and whatever we roll, we get one benefit, whether it's sustained hits, lethal hits, or critical wounds getting additional AP. Alternatively, we can just select one of these, but then every weapon has hazardous. Now, for this detachment, there is a specific little added addendum that if something has hazardous already, and we give it an additional hazardous buff, or debuff as it would be, it makes it that hazardous triggers on 1s and 2s. This is a common theme with a lot of stuff with this detachment, as there's other stratagems that we can push it and gain a stronger ability with it, but gain the hazardous keyword, meaning that we could end up ripping our things to shreds, but with stuff like the Mork and Gorkanaut and their high amount of wounds, doing that one time to really push these guys could be game-breaking and brutal just for the damage output that they could end up putting out there. So, yeah, this is a fun detachment. If you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, this plays a lot like some black decks where your life is a resource. And, well, in some ways, the wounds on some of these things are resources. And we'll start off with the biggest resources in these, the Gork and the Gorkanaut. So we're bringing both big bad boys. I know that the Gorkanaut seems to be the more popular one. It brings more firepower than the Gorkanaut per se. And also with a new, I'm not sure if this is new, but I don't remember seeing this before, the ability that now when these guys are in the WA, they get +1 to hit, just depending on which one. The Gorkanaut gets +1 to hit in the fight phase, while the Gorkanaut gets +1 to hit when shooting. Now, these guys do not get the cool Imperial Knight buff to be able to go through walls, so that's going to be still a limitation they have. But these guys are relatively cheap, under 300 points for them, and they're big, bulky beasts coming in with toughness 12 and 20 wounds. So, yeah, no, actually looking it up now, they always had that ability. But basically, when I go into the WA, these guys can get +1 to hit. The Gorkanaut in the shooting phase, the Gorkanaut in the fight phase. So these guys are still pretty brutal. A big thing with this detachment, again, being able to push it, there's a stratagem that for 1 command point, we can give full rerolls to hit to an Ork Walker. And, well, these guys are Ork Walker. Actually, I think it extends to a couple other things as well. But these guys are, in fact, Ork Walkers. So these guys are able to get full rerolls to hit, but they gain hazardous. Then if you pick something like Sustained, you're going to take hazardous on 1s and 2s. They have a lot of weapons, a lot of guns, but you can really crank out sustained hits, taking a lot of damage in the turnaround, which makes it that 20 wounds is kind of nice, so that at least you can push it through and really eliminate something. I mean, it could be game breaking where you remove a unit from the table and now there's nothing there. So even though this guy is sitting there with only 5 or 6 wounds remaining, there's nothing that can peel that 5 or 6 wounds off. They also are great targets for the mechs, as they can get D3 heal, as well as +1 to hit. So if we're not in the wall, the Gorkanaut can get that +1 to hit, or the Gorkanaut can get +1 to hit in shooting when it normally wouldn't anyways. Moving on, we have inside these guys, because these guys are transports, if you didn't know, we have 2 tank bustas. Tank bustas are crazy now. Tank bustas, you take them in squads of 6, as they were before 5. Now, the way I have these guys, I can talk about, oh, you can do this, you can do that, but the way I'm kitting these guys out is the 5 Orks will have rockets. The Knob will have the rocket pistols. Now, the Knob could take the hammer, but I kept the pistols on him because I want to do, this is for shooting. These guys are going to be led by a mech, which more on those guys later. But these guys have 2 bomb squigs, so in 12 inches, they can do some mortal wounds, sending those guys off at a target, which it's not a shooting attack, so just nice little extra damage. But then you have the 5 rockets inside the squad. Once per game, we can use this special ability called the Pulse Rocket, which gives them +1 strength and +1 AP to the rockets that they're their shooting attack that round. Now, these guys only hit on 5s, and we don't have any way in this detachment of increasing that per se. But we can give them sustained hits because they're going to be led by a mech, and we can also allow them to, and then we can get that strength up, as well as the fact that when they shoot at a monster or vehicle unit, they're getting +1 to wound versus those targets. So having that and being able to get the just generate extra attacks through the sustained hits, they're D3 shots plus blast. So going into going into units, we can get a lot of increased shots. Vehicles, not so much. But we can kind of compensate for what we miss by getting the sustained hits and then having such a strong strength +1 to wound and damage, in the flat 3 damage, that it kind of compensates for it in the other end. Or at least I'm feeling like it should. I'm hoping that it does. So yeah, tank busters are nasty. I know that there's some other detachments that could do a little bit better with them. The new Grotmus one, you can issue orders to get these guys that +1 to hit, but sustained is still pretty cool. And these guys are coming out of the Gorkanauts, and they'll be able to get, like I said, they'll be able to get that sustained because they are led by our 2 mechs. So mechs, very simple. These guys are able to repair vehicles. They get +1 to hit when they repair that vehicle to that target that they're doing it to. And they have a really kind of cool gun. The custom Mega Blaster, D3 shots blast, strength 8, AP2 for D6 damage. It's only a 12-inch range, but with the rocket pistols for the squad they were getting into, he might get close enough for that. At the end, though, what's kind of funny is if the whole squad gets destroyed and he's left by himself, he does have lone op, as long as he's within 3 inches of an Ork vehicle. So that's kind of a little added benefit. And the kill saw for damage in combat, we just gave him the 1 attack kill saw because if he's going to hit, we want to make sure he does the damage. So the mechs, I'll give them the mech keyword so that they have access to our detachment rule, being that this is one of the units that mechs can actually join. So my plan is these guys are going to go inside the Gorkanaut with the tank bustas. They can disembark, buff the Gorkanaut to give them +1 to hit, and then we have 1 turn of heavy shooting. When our opponent turns around and shoots back and tries to eliminate the tank bustas, which surprisingly tank bustas have 2 wounds each and are a 4-up save. So a little more durability out of these guys than you would expect. Get them in cover and we're looking at a 3-up. But when they do eliminate them, is the character is left alive, he can still go wander off, do secondaries, and basically just keep the Gork and Morkanot going. Next up, we'll go over into our 18 Killa cans. Love these guys. So Killa cans are toughness 6 with 5 wounds. They have an inherent ability to be able to increase the strength or AP of their weaponry for their own ability. Unfortunately, it does come at a cost. If they fail if they roll a 1 or 2 when testing this ability, they do D6 mortal wounds to themselves. So it's kind of a little high. That's a really high risk, high reward ability coming out of them. But otherwise, they have a 6-up invulnerable save inherently, which most of the walkers do. The Gorkanaut has a 6. The Morkanaut has a 5. They have rockets on 2 of the squads and flamethrowers on 1 squad. So these guys are a lot of firepower coming out of them. Number 1, these guys have a little bit better ballistic skill because they're run by Grots. So they have a ballistic skill of 4-up, a little bit better to hit. They have access into the sustained ability, so they can roll into getting sustained hits easier. Unfortunately, they can't access the stratagem to reroll hits. See, they are I have to look at this because they are a walker. Actually, I think they do, because they are a walker, and they have the orc keyword, so they are an orc. They are an orcs walker. So yeah, okay, they can get that. They are a grot vehicle as well, but these guys are a orc and a walker. Yeah, so they do. They can do the full rerolls to hit. So we could burn some of these guys up to go crazy with the rockets and pour shots into something. And then we have the Scorches. Scorches, obviously, we don't want to really do too much with them. The sustained and lethal doesn't really matter. We would want to kind of go into that boosted AP, so 6s to wound are additional damage. So that's kind of where we'd want to go there. Not a lot of stratagems to support the flamers per se in the shooting, but it's just such a strong unit. I mean, it's such a strong Overwatch threat. They're AP1, which is great. I love having that 1 squad, because that 1 squad can just move up and really just be a super threat. And if you get close to them, they just start burning things away. So good. But all these squads have a strong combat presence as well. Being that we're orcs, we like to fight in combat. So with things like the WA, being able to advance and charge, getting the plus to our invuln and everything like that, these guys are pretty rough. 250 points for a 6-man, so not too terrible there. Only issue with them, they are walkers, so they can't go through walls. But, man, they are tough. They get 3 attacks apiece in combat, strength 8 AP2 for flat 3 damage. Then you have the missiles that are also flat 3 damage. These guys can do some really solid damage. And like we're talking about with the vehicle meta, while these guys are only coming in with like strength 9, yes, we have a way of buffing it, but we don't really want to talk about that because we do damage to ourselves. It's just volume and volume of shots. You're looking at, if this squad shoots into a vehicle, it's 6d3 rockets. If this squad shoots into a unit, they have blast. So you shoot into a 10-man Marine squad just right off rip, you're getting 12 plus 6d3 shots going into there, and then if go ahead and trigger your sustained for extra, and then we could go re-roll hits and just shred a squad of Marines that just looks at us funny. So there's a lot of firepower. High risk, high reward, though, is going to be the theme of a lot of stuff in this army. Next up, we're going into our secondary game. So first we have two squads of Storm Boys. Storm Boys have deep strike. Storm Boys can fall back, advance, and charge, so they don't have to worry about the wall. So these guys are going to be great for just secondary game. Deep strike them in, score some points, be able to advance and move and get onto an objective if need be by like charging a unit on that advance. Very quick, very mobile, great secondary unit. Kind of just, that's really all there is to say. 65 points for a deep striking unit. Absolutely. And with some of the point changes, I was able to get 2 of these where before I only had 1. So these guys are going to deep strike in and just hopefully score me some points. Next and final, we have Grots. because this detachment allows us to take Gratz, our Gretchen, as battle line. So we could take more than just 3, even though I only have 3 units, but it's nice that they're battle lines so that some of the mission rules these guys can utilize. So Gratz, what is there to say about them? Their toughness 2. They have a surprisingly decent ballistic skill because, you know, Gratz shoot a little bit better. But there's not really much to say about them. Their toughness 2, so they just get shredded. I mean, a basic bolter is going to put them into oblivion. But, you know, there's 10 guys for 40 points. And they are also a big part of the command point regeneration game. These guys, as long as they're within range of an objective marker, I roll a dice for each Grot unit within range of an objective marker, and on a 4-up, I gain a command point. So getting these guys on objectives is kind of important. Now, we have 2 10-man squads. One's going to sit at home and hold our home field objective, covering and zoning out. One will probably go into strategic to walk on so that it doesn't get hit by stray fire and get destroyed as it goes across the field. Then we have this 20-man squad. And the 20-man squad is going to be led by a model that we don't currently have pictures of because Lane is bringing us this bad boy. And that is the character who his data sheet would be amazing in any other unit that he was leading except Gretchen, but he is the only one who can lead Gretchen, and his name is Zod. I gotta look him up real quick. His name is Zodgrod Wartsnaga. So Zodgrod Wartsnaga, he gives a unit a 9-inch scout move. He gives that unit +1 to hit and +1 to wound. He also makes that unit -1 to wound. And during the WA, you can add 6 inches to the move characteristics of model in this unit. In any other unit, he would be so broken. But because he's leading Gretchen, he's not that broken. However, that 9-inch scout move, the extra durability, is really nice to be able to get out on an objective early with this unit. Having 20 of them means that we have more coverage, so even if we get hit from afar, we still have some left. So we're going to give Zodrog a try today and see if he's worth his 80 points, because the opposite is I can just put more Grots in. All right, so that is the list. So like I said, I don't have Zodrog right now. I'm considering getting him, but I want to try him out first because he's kind of been off my radar per se on some of the orc stuff because it's one of those ones that was tough to pull the trigger because he looks really cool. Like he looks like he could really do some amazing things hurting those Gretchen over to an objective. However, he's also 80 points, which while that's not too expensive, I could just take 2 more 10-man squads of Grots because I can take them as battle line. So it makes me kind of wonder, I could take the 20-man, break it up into 2 10s, and then take 2 more squads, and then take 6 10-mans of Gretchen. Not too good in things like no prisoners, giving the easy kills, but it is units I can just, 60 models I can flood the board with. So it's some thoughts in there. I want to see how it works out. I feel like the scout move will be very helpful. Being able to scout those guys up, get them on objective, and then just make them a little bit more durable than some people would expect. And then they'll be able to shoot back, hitting and getting +1 to hit, +1. I mean, they hit on 3s now, which is crazy. So maybe they'll actually be able to do some damage with that one squad. But yeah, the premise of the list is now with how I have the Storm Boys and the Gretchen and that enough invested in those units that now the Killicans, the big guys, the Gorkanaut can really focus on destruction on the battlefield. And I don't have to worry as much about what I'm doing with secondaries because I have all this other stuff to do the secondaries. I bring the Gretchen on for recover assets or containment, bring them on close to an objective marker. I have the big Grot brick that's going to be able to get in the corner, zoning out my backfield. So I have a lot of good coverage out of this list. And then you have the 2 squads of Storm Boys. And then we look over into the firepower, how many rockets we have, how much damage we have. Now, granted, it is orc shooting, which means it can be very swingy. If we roll hot, we can annihilate something very quickly. If we don't roll hot, then we just kind of waste our shooting. My hope is that kind of play it by design. A lot of orc shooting on paper looks brutal till you look at the ballistic skill. So we look at that same factor with things like the tank bustas. Tank bustas can, once per game, use that pulse rocket to go +1 strength, +1 AP. So it puts them up to strength 10, AP 3. So when we're going into T10 vehicles, now that we'd be wounding them on 4s, we go to wounding them on 3s. So by getting that better to wound roll off of them might help to compensate for how many shots we miss. And because of the fact that once we use the pulse rocket, we lose a lot of that efficiency, going and automatically picking sustained and losing a couple orcs in the process is not the end of the world, because that's going to be the hit that we need to stick. We want that hit to really hit home. And since 6s are going to give us sustained, hopefully that'll kind of help wash out some of the volume of misses that we're going to have, since 1 through 4 is going to be a miss. Hopefully that'll help wash it into it. That's about it. That's what we're looking at. So I'm excited to get these guys on the table. Hopefully it's a good feel for them, because I would love to. A lot of people know me for playing Necrons, playing Grey Knights. Those are armies that I've my groups and the traveling and where I go, they know me for. It'd be kind of fun to show up to an RTT with orcs and have everyone go, "Oh, you were serious when you said you're coming in with orcs." So would be fun, especially 18 kilocans. Come on, 18 kilocans. Who doesn't love 18 kilocans? Probably the guy who's getting run over by 18 kilocans, but 18 kilocans. Love it. All right, guys. Well, we'll see how this goes and see how this does. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.